So why? Well, we're all data subjects and we all expect our data to be kept safe. So if we're opening a bank account, for example, taking out a new credit card, we put our trust in those institutions and organisations to keep our data safe, because the ramifications of those data not being kept safe is that we are put at risk. And that could be financial risk, but actually it could be reputational risk. If our personal data that relates to our lifestyle, our sensitive data is into the public domain, actually there's a reputational risk or some harm that could come to us as a result. So this is why this is about. And it doesn't just mean computer files. There's a misperception that actually this is about computers. This is about the digital age only, but it's not. It's also about those old records that are kept in paper files. But this covers virtually any data. And it's about the activities of controller or processor in the European Union, regardless of where the processing takes place. And it covers the data of subjects who reside in the Union, no matter where the controller or processor are based. So if a global company is, say, based in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, or wherever, are processing data of EU subjects, they have to abide by the GDPR. But it doesn't apply if you're processing data that's purely for personal use. So contacts on your personal mobile phones that are your mates, your colleagues, outside of work, for example, or your social network, or it's details about whatever household duty you're conducting, it doesn't count. This is about personal information processed for the purpose of your business. Law enforcement agencies also are covered by another bit of legislation called the European Directive on Law Enforcement, and under the new Data Protection Act next year, that will be combined with GDPR, along with some new legislation for the Secret Services. So that's kind of the scope of this bit of legislation. So what is personally identifiable information? Traditionally, PII has been your name, your address, phone number, maybe your bank account number, national insurance number, and so on and so forth. But actually, this is recognizing that data is much bigger and broader than that. So data now has been extended. So it's any information relating to a living, identified or identifiable natural person. So natural persons there's two different categories, natural person and legal person. Legal person is a corporation, is a corporate entity, whereas a natural person is the likes of you and I. So if you can be directly or indirectly identified by a piece of information such as a name, an identification number, your geolocation data, an online identifier like your IP address, or factors around physical, mental, genetic, and so on and so forth, that is personal information. So you can see how there are ramifications for online data when it comes to geolocation data, IP addresses, and other identifiers that can be used to identify an individual. If you can identify an individual from the data held, then it falls within personal information. And again, it doesn't apply to household activities, and it can't be a corporate person. So if you were to collect information about a company's head office address, or maybe their limited company registration number, that's not personal data. That's legal entity data. So yes. So some data is sensitive. And if you look at this list, some people say it's quite unusual to find that financial data isn't on there. Special category data under Article 9 is that list. So anything to do around race or ethnic origin, political opinions or affiliations, religious or political beliefs, trade union membership, genetic or biometric data. Now that's only sensitive if it's used for the purpose of uniquely identifying a natural person. So what that means is, if you had a CCTV camera, for example, photographing or recording images of people, that isn't necessarily genetic sensitive data. If you applied facial recognition to that camera, put the software onto it, and then you're able to identify individuals uniquely through that system. That then becomes sensitive data. Same with biometrics. If you use a biometric thumb reader to access an apartment or a building, that becomes sensitive data or special category data, because you're applying biometric data to uniquely identify a natural person. Health related, most people collect some form of health related data, such even when you're employing people for a number of reasons. And also information about sex life and sexual orientation is considered special categories. And these have additional rules and processing restrictions. By and large, you cannot process this kind of data unless you've got certain conditions in place. Now, one of those is explicit consent from the data subject, where they have to sign an explicit consent statement to say you are able to collect this and process this data, or things such as for employment purposes, or if you're a charity or foundation such as the Scouts and you're collecting this kind of data to for your sort of duty of care responsibilities around those people in your charge. So there are a number of derogations that allow you to process this, but you have to be really careful about this kind of data. So processing is quite a broad piece as well. So processing is can be obtaining. You obtain someone's personal data, you've just processed it, or maybe you hold it. So, for example, if someone sends you a CV, you've obtained their personal data, and if you just hold it on your hard drive, you're processing it. You don't have to actually do anything with it to be classified as processing the data. So obtaining, recording, or holding the information or data, or carrying out any operation on it. And you'll see how your kind of work fits into this definition. So manipulating the data, organizing it, adapting it, using it, transmitting it, and destroying, blocking, or erasing the data is still classed as processing. There is a caveat to this processor designation, in that the law says that if you have a commercial agreement with another company, just because you perform some act within the contract, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a data processor, and that provides a little bit of grey in as much of defining the responsibilities around data controllers, data processors, and those others in the middle not being sure what they are and what they're supposed to be doing. And we come on to those definitions shortly.